G'day team. First of all, please excuse me for my lack of clothing, but it is absolutely roasting here in Perth and I need to stay cool. So last weekend I had a pretty negative experience with a client and I started planning an episode to talk around clients and client relationships. But as I went through planning that episode, I kind of felt like the video was talking more around relationships within business. And so I'm going to focus on that today. So first up, I need to provide some context as to Bruce's view of the world. So the first thing is, with regards to client relationship, is I'm a firm believer that the client is not always right. In fact, I'm a firm believer that no one is ever always right, and that is myself included. I am, however, a firm believer that successful projects are built through teamwork, and by taking each person's view and using their strength, that's how you achieve a successful project. And that project could be anything from building a house all the way through to video work like I do. But the important thing here is that we are using each person's strength, and that needs to be identified as to when they are strongest. I think as small businesses, we're often looking towards big businesses to show us the way. I think that often with small business owners, we think that those big corporations know exactly what they're doing. But the problem is that I think people forget that big corporations are made up by individuals, and each of those individuals is an individual. One person is better than the next, one person is more experienced than the next, one person cares about their job, the next one may not care as much. And at this point, if you haven't watched the documentary The Corporation...
What is a corporation? It is under the law a legal person.
These are a special kind of person who have no moral conscience, designed by law to be concerned only for their stockholders.
There are companies that make our lives better, and that's a good thing. The problem comes in the profit motivation.
Then I'd suggest you do so, because it's good. But ultimately, I think as individuals, we all think that big corporations know exactly what they're doing. The problem is that it's a whole bunch of individuals who are all working towards a common goal, and yet at the same time they are working towards their own individual goals. And what I'm saying here is that big businesses are not always right, and they are certainly not always the shining light that small businesses often hold them in. I'm also of the belief that when you give a person a job, there's a reason that you give them a job. You should be selecting them on their skill, and so you've got to be trusting that you've given that job to them and they will do it. So when you bring that work back in and you're working as a team, then everyone has a role to play, and part of that is finding the balance as when to take or reject input. Now I realise this is a massive amount of rambling in kind of hodgepodge areas of relationships, but I think what I'm getting to is that basically we need to understand our roles when we're working in business. And to do that we need to understand ourselves better. We need to know when to push an idea and when to sit back. And as a small business we must have processes in place to make sure that at the end of the day we deliver a successful product or service. On the flip side, as clients, we need to understand that we're handing something over to somebody because they are more experienced and better at it than us. So as clients, that means we need to stay inside those processes and ultimately trust the person that we're giving the job to. And then hopefully by having a small business which has processes and experience and a trusting and understanding client, that brings together a successful project. Unfortunately with all of this, there's no real quick fix. I mean, organisations spend a lot of time sending people on courses to find out what kind of person they are so that they can better understand themselves. And that's ultimately the only way that we can progress here. Ultimately, we all need to become better at being self-aware at what we're good and what we're bad at. And that's a massive ask, because I know this is such a massive topic and it's just so many different angles to look at. I think as a final summary for this very rambly vlog is that I think as individuals we need to be self-aware. As small businesses, we need to have defined processes so that people know how things run. And I think as clients, we need to be trusting in people's delivery of products. Anyway, that's definitely enough rambling from me. As ever, if you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you're enjoying the content that I'm putting out about my business, even if it is as fluffy as this sort of stuff, please consider subscribing to the channel. And as always, thanks for watching, guys.